It was on October 13, 1995, that Jeburk's actions truly captured public attention. Along with accomplices Daniel Evans and Lamarco Roscoe, he held up bank teller Amy Shaw's family hostage at gunpoint, making away with $86,000, a sum that remains uncovered to this day. This heist marked the start of a spree that stretched from Florida to New England, involving numerous banks and escalating into increasingly violent and brazen acts. October 13, 1995, the Shaw family home in Columbia, South Carolina was supposed to be a sanctuary. However, when Parker Shaw attempted to open the garage door that day, he unknowingly triggered the beginning of a harrowing ordeal. Two armed men ambushed Parker, quickly binding him with duct tape before dragging him into his house. His wife Brenda and their granddaughter Brianna were next, thrust into a terror that had no end in sight. For Amy Shaw, Parker's daughter and a dedicated bank teller, the day began like any other. But as she drove home, she had no idea her life was about to change forever. In her absence, her parents and child were being held hostage by a man whose motivations were far from random. This was no ordinary robbery, and this was no ordinary criminal. Christopher Lawrence Jeburk, the man orchestrating the crime, was on a mission. With a criminal mind sharpened by years of deceit, bank heists, and prison escapes, Jeburk had become infamous along the East Coast. Now, he was about to pull off one of his most audacious robberies yet, by using an innocent family to gain access to a fortune. Christopher Lawrence Jeburk is an American convicted felon who successfully committed a string of bank robberies along the East Coast of the United States. He escaped 4 times from prison, twice from a regional detention center and twice while in federal custody, to commit more crimes, including a jewel heist in Indonesia. His methods were bold and unpredictable. Rather than merely walking into a bank with a weapon, Jeburk chose a different route. Take the bank's employees hostage and leverage their fear for his own gain. This led him to Amy Shaw in the North Augusta Bank, where he was about to commit one of the most infamous crimes. The plan was meticulously executed. Jeburk and his crew had been watching the Shaw family for weeks, studying their schedules and movements. Jeburk's objective was clear: force Amy Shaw to open the bank vault by threatening the lives of her family. On October 13, 1995, Parker and Brenda Shaw returned home to their residence in North Augusta, South Carolina, with their granddaughter, Brianna. It was a typical Friday afternoon, and they were babysitting Brianna as her mother, Amy Shaw, worked late as a bank teller. When Parker tried to open the garage door, the remote wasn't working. Unaware that intruders were inside, he entered the house to open the garage door from the inside. Once inside, Parker was confronted by 2 armed men who quickly bound him with duct tape and forced him into the bedroom. Meanwhile, outside, Brenda, tired of waiting with Brianna, began walking toward the front door. As she approached, the garage door finally opened. One of the intruders forced Brenda into the bedroom where her husband was being held. The gunmen stole money and credit cards from the terrified couple, but their true intention became clear when the leader of the group announced that they had come for Amy Shaw and the money at her bank. The intruders planned to wait for Amy to return home. For over an hour, the gunmen held the Shaws and Brianna hostage. At 7 p.m., the lead gunman ordered Brenda into the living room, leaving one of his men to guard Parker and Brianna. From the front window, the gunman and Brenda watched for Amy's arrival, knowing exactly when she would return. Amy Shaw, meanwhile, was ending her workday, unaware of the danger awaiting her. When she returned to the house, she was surprised to find the front door locked, which was unusual. Realizing something was wrong, she was immediately grabbed by the leader of the gunmen, who told her that they had been watching her family for some time and knew their schedules. He interrogated Amy about the bank's security system. Amy, recalling her training, complied with the intruder's demands, explaining that the bank vault required 2 separate codes to open, and she only had one of them. The gunman decided to take Amy to the bank, leaving instructions for his men to wait at the Shaw residence. At gunpoint, Amy drove across the Savannah River from South Carolina into Georgia, heading to the bank where she worked. The gunman ordered her to circle the bank slowly to check if anyone was inside, particularly the cleaning crew. As they neared the bank's automated teller machine, Amy hoped to catch the kidnapper's image on the security camera, but it didn't work since the ATM camera only activated when a card was inserted. Then they drove to the bank's back door. Inside, Amy showed the gunman the alarm system she could disable, but reiterated that she couldn't open the vault alone without the second combination from a coworker. The gunman reminded her that her family's safety depended on him gaining access to the vault. Back at the Shaw residence, the intruders moved the family to the living room, keeping their guns at the ready. Tensions increased as the men grew more agitated. At one point, the gun went off accidentally, alarming the intruders. Soon after, another car pulled up to the house. It was Amy's brother-in-law, his wife, and their young daughter. The family quickly was taken hostage as they entered the home, bringing the total number of hostages to 6. At the bank, the gunman instructed Amy to call her coworker for the second combination to the vault. The coworker hesitated at first, not fully understanding the situation. Amy tried to explain that her family was being held hostage, but the gunman then took over the call, threatening to come for the combination himself if the coworker didn't comply. Fearing for Amy's safety, the coworker eventually gave the second code, and the gunman instructed her to stay on the line to prevent her from calling the police. Amy nervously entered the second part of the combination, but the vault didn't open. The gunman became agitated, threatening her to make it work. Amy carefully re-entered the code and the vault door opened. The robber instructed Amy to point out which bins contained bait money, which was sequentially numbered or rigged with die packs. He left that cash alone and began loading up the rest of the money. Once he had secured more than $86,000, the gunman ordered Amy to call her parents' house. Using a second phone line, the leader told his men at the house to take care of things and leave once they got his signal. He then fled with the money. Amy immediately set off the bank's alarm and, frantic with worry, called her family. Brenda warned her not to call the police as the gunmen were still there, but it was too late. Amy had already alerted the authorities. Meanwhile, at the Shaw residence, the gunmen were preparing to leave, checking the family's bindings. However, one of the intruders hesitated, seemingly uncertain about leaving 6 witnesses behind. Nonetheless, the intruders eventually left and the family was able to free themselves and wait for the police to arrive. The police responded to the situation in both South Carolina and Georgia. Richmond County Sheriff's officers learned that the primary crime was occurred across the Savannah River in North Augusta, South Carolina, and Edgefield County Sheriff's investigator Don Bullock was dispatched to the scene. The Shaws described the gunmen as best they could, but they never saw their faces due to the masks. The suspects were identified as African American males. A search of the crime scene revealed several pieces of evidence: oily shoe prints on the garage floor, a .38 caliber bullet casing in the living room, and fingerprints from a vehicle the gunman had attempted to steal. The vehicle had gotten stuck in a ditch, forcing the gunman to flee on foot, leaving behind several items, including weapons, clothing, masks, and gloves. An all-points bulletin was issued for 3 African American males, 2 on foot and 1 in a dark blue sedan. Within 1 hour of the 911 call, an off-duty deputy on his way to the Shaw residence spotted 2 men fitting the description walking near the neighborhood. When questioned, the men, Daniel Evans and Lamarco Roscoe, claimed they had been playing basketball at a church. However, the church they mentioned had no lights on the basketball court, and it was dark at the time. Sensing something was off, the deputy called for backup and took the 2 men to a police staging area for further questioning. At the police staging area, FBI Special Agent Jerry Jones and Sheriff's Investigator Kenneth Booz separated the 2 suspects, knowing that this tactic could cause one to break down first. The suspects were unable to provide convincing details about the church where they had allegedly been playing basketball, and investigators suspected they were involved in the crime. Special Agent Jones focused his interrogation on Lamarco Roscoe, identifying his fear of the death penalty as a potential weakness. Jones knew Amy was safe but told Roscoe that if the third robber had killed her, the consequences would be severe. Authorities were seeking Christopher Jeburk, wanted for armed kidnapping and bank robbery. At the request of FBI agents and Richmond County deputies, Jeburk's mother called her son and advised him to speak with authorities. Around 1 a.m., Jeburk, then 19 years old and already on probation for burglary and an escape from a detention center, arrived with his girlfriend at the sheriff's department. FBI Special Agent Jerry Jones questioned Jeburk about the bank robbery and kidnapping of the Shaw family in Georgia. Jeburk admitted to knowing the two confessed gunmen, Daniel Evans and Lamarco Roscoe, but denied involvement in the crime. He claimed to have been with his girlfriend and another female friend in Mount Vernon, Georgia at the time of the crime, stating they went to a movie after arriving back in Augusta. Jones paused the interview and spoke to the two women who had accompanied Jeburk. They declined to corroborate Jeburk's story. According to Richmond County Sheriff's investigator Kenneth Booz, Jeburk claimed he was involved in a drug deal in Atlanta during the robbery. Despite his changing story, federal authorities charged Jeburk with 6 counts, including conspiracy, carjacking, kidnapping, and armed bank robbery. Eventually, Jeburk admitted to being involved in the robbery and kidnapping, though he claimed he wasn't the mastermind. Instead, alleging involvement with a large criminal organization, which he refused to name, citing fear for his family's safety. Jeburk's accomplices, Daniel Evans and Lamarco Roscoe, pleaded guilty to state charges of burglary, kidnapping, and armed robbery, receiving 30-year sentences. Jeburk was prosecuted by Assistant U.S. Attorney Richard Goolsby. While the case lacked scientific evidence, the teller and her family members were reliable witnesses, helping to secure Jeburk's conviction on all 6 counts, making him eligible for life in prison without parole. While awaiting sentencing, Jeburk was held at a small county jail, where he met another inmate, Jerome Frierson Bay, a bank robber awaiting trial for 3 armed robberies. On March 27, 1996, during a routine parole, a guard noticed an open door, and a head count revealed that Jeburk and Frierson Bay were missing. Construction workers had seen 2 prisoners running toward a wooded area near the jail. Despite a search of the nearby woods and swamps, no trace of the 2 men was found. Authorities believe the escapees had outside help and set up roadblocks, but Jeburk and Frierson Bay remained at large. The Shaw family, who had testified against Jeburk, were placed under police protection as a precaution. FBI Special Agent Doug Fender developed a lead during a separate investigation into a stolen green Mitsubishi Eclipse in Augusta. A jailed individual revealed that the stolen vehicle had been transferred to one of Jeburk's female associates. Agents interviewed the woman, who initially denied involvement but later admitted to helping Jeburk and Frierson Bay escape. She and Jeburk's girlfriend had delivered the stolen car to a parking lot near the jail, where the men found a stashed cache of clothes, food, and weapons. The 2 fugitives, armed with fresh supplies, began their escape. The next day, a car matching the stolen vehicle's description pulled up to a bank in Lumberton, North Carolina, about 220 miles from the jail. 2 men wearing hats, gloves, and sunglasses robbed the bank at gunpoint, stealing $4,500. The car, found an hour later in Lumberton, matched the fugitive's vehicle. Shortly after, the 2 men committed a home invasion and carjacking in Lumberton, forcing a couple to hand over the keys to their car and a change of clothes. The victims later identified Jeburk and Frierson Bay from a photo lineup. The fugitives continued north, committing a series of bank robberies along the I-95 corridor. Authorities suspected them in as many as 14 bank robberies, with surveillance footage and witness identifications linking them to the crimes. The FBI focused their search on New Jersey, where Frierson Bay had family. Based on tips received through a nationally televised program, agents tracked Frierson Bay to a motel in Paterson, New Jersey. FBI agents surveilled the motel, eventually spotting Frierson Bay as he approached his car. Despite commands to surrender, Frierson Bay locked himself inside the vehicle. A SWAT team member broke the window with the butt of his submachine gun, and Frierson Bay was forcibly removed. A loaded Glock semi-automatic handgun and $1,500 in stolen cash were recovered from the vehicle, but there was no sign of Jeburk. Authorities believe Jeburk had parted ways with Frierson Bay and returned to Georgia. A $10,000 reward was offered for Jeburk's capture, and his name was considered for the FBI's 10 most wanted list. A tip came in from a woman who believed Jeburk was staying with her minister in Atlanta. FBI agents disguised as yard workers staked out the minister's residence. When Jeburk arrived, agents arrested him without resistance, finding $2,000 in his socks. Despite being recaptured, Jeburk was not ready to give up. 6 weeks later, he escaped again, using a partial saw blade to cut through his jail window. He climbed over a fence topped with razor wire, leaving behind shreds of his prison uniform and traces of blood. Authorities believe Jeburk had fled into a nearby wooded area. They used tracking dogs and helicopters equipped with heat-seeking infrared systems to search the swampy, densely forested area, but found no sign of him. 4 days after his escape, an off-duty sheriff's deputy in Abilene, Georgia, spotted a limping man who matched Jeburk's description. Officers converged on the area and apprehended Jeburk near a grammar school. 2 weeks later, he was sentenced to life in prison plus 5 years for the Augusta bank robbery and the Shaw family kidnapping. Jeburk was sent to federal prison in Leavenworth, Kansas, with no possibility of parole. Despite being held in a maximum security facility, Jeburk attempted yet another escape. He was caught hiding under a prison laundry truck, almost making it to the front gate. After this attempt, Jeburk was transferred to the maximum security federal penitentiary in Atlanta, where escape was considered nearly impossible. However, authorities remained vigilant as no one doubted that Jeburk would try to escape again. Today, Christopher Lawrence Jeburk sits behind bars in one of the most secure penitentiaries in the United States, where escape is virtually impossible. His legacy, however, lives on in the stories of those he terrorized and the many he evaded. Despite the cold steel that now holds him in, Jeburk's mind remains as sharp as ever, likely still plotting, still imagining what his next great escape could be. The television show The Federal Bureau of Investigation Files showed how the Jeburk case happened in the episode Held Hostage. For the Shaw family, the events of the October day remain a traumatic chapter in their lives, but also one of resilience. Amy Shaw, once a bank teller thrust into an unthinkable situation, emerged not as a victim, but as a survivor, someone who faced a nightmare and lived to tell the tale. The South Carolina bank robbery may have been America's smartest, but in the end, it was no match for the relentless efforts of the FBI and local police. As the dust settled and the Shaw family began to heal from their traumatic ordeal, they took solace in the knowledge that the mastermind behind the suffering was finally behind bars. The story serves as a reminder that even the most cunning criminals can be brought to justice when faced with the determination and resolve of those sworn to protect the public. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe to Breakout Bank for more videos.